Hi everyone, today I just want to talk about dishonesty and people just getting away these days with being dishonest, and it brings up the question, why be honest these days? And you look at the news day in, day out, and I'm sure you hear about people in your daily life that seem to borderline scam people, be dishonest, but they're the ones that seem to be succeeding in life. And it's just a subject that I've talked about with family and friends, and especially one of my friends, we always bring it up because the stories just keep coming out. And even if you look over in the US, there was a story out yesterday. I'm not going to name names, and I don't want to get political in this channel at all. I just want to kind of share experiences and tips and lessons learned from my life. But the amount of politicians over in America that are just super wealthy now. You earn $140,000 a year, I think it is, and magically you're worth tens of millions. And it's the same over in here in Britain. For some reason, it's kind of one rule for them, one rule for us a lot of the time, and you just kind of sometimes sit there and go, why do I be honest? Why do I be kind of within the rules, don't bend the rules, when it's kind of, you feel like you're getting nowhere. And I think we've all known people or people like friends of friends that have done the same. I mean, I knew of this guy that he'd set up this big construction company, and he always seemed to have companies and new companies and wasn't shy about it at all. I mean, back when I was on social media, I don't have it anymore, quit binned it a long time ago, it would always be plastered on there, these new ventures and new initiatives and investments and everything. And it would no longer be called Company A, it's Company B and then Company C, and just seemed to win all these big contracts, and then the company would go bust, and then all of a sudden Company B's going around, and then that goes on for maybe a year or two, and that's now all over Facebook and the newspaper that company's bust. And before you know it, you'd maybe see the person in town or a friend of a friend had bumped into them, and they're still driving a Porsche Jeep, and they're still in all the best bars throwing money around, and still living in the massive house, and they've still got all their other properties. And I appreciate that it's clever accounting, I understand how they get away with it, but it's just dishonesty. And again, it brings up the question, kind of, why do it the right way then? Why set up the company and pay off all your debtors and sort everything like that out, and then just take the hit yourself? And there was someone else I knew when I lived over in Norway, and they would constantly be buying bars and restaurants and clubs, and every 6 months, a year, it would just collapse, or it would get shut down or whatever, or there'd be an incident there, and then a couple of weeks it's reopened again with under a different name and being all refurbished, or they bought the place next door, and they must have had like 50 different companies. But again, despite all that, despite this going in debt, and it was quite, you'd read it in the newspapers, despite this bar going under, owing £400,000 or like $500,000, they're opening another place 2 weeks later, and then they must just get investors in, be great at selling that, and then a year later that goes down again and gets closed, bankrupt, whatever you want to say, and the whole cycle starts again. And again, you end up maybe seeing the person, or bump into them, and you kind of half know who they are, and you're asking, oh, you see you opened that new place down the road, but they're still wearing a flash suit, they've still got the expensive watch, still pulling up in their £200,000 car. And again, you ask yourself, why am I busting a gut at work, getting up early and putting in all this effort when they just seem to, dishonestly and get their way through life and seem to be absolutely living it to the max. And I think, like I say, I think it's a fair question that would come up in anyone's life, because I think we've all kind of seen that. But I agreed with myself a long time ago. I remember being maybe around 20, would have been 22, 23 when I was graduating. I remember one of the guys I worked with, he was a bit dishonest, and he would try and kind of worm his way up the ladder, etc. And I genuinely remember sitting at my desk telling myself, I'll never be that person. I'll never be that person who's dishonest with people, tries to scam people, kind of really bends around the system, because it's simply just dishonest. And I genuinely believe that kind of karma's a thing. I think if you're out there annoying people every day, getting on the wrong side of people or the law, etc., and you're doing exactly what I explained that those two people were doing, where they're probably scamming people legally, to be honest, transferring money from different accounts to different accounts, etc. And I think if you're doing stuff like that, karma just comes back and bites you. And I think living an honest life and kind of paying your bills, paying your taxes, for, if you know what I mean, and doing it the right way. I think being able to sleep at night and wake up with a proper, straight conscience, that I think that's worth more than anything in the world. And I genuinely believe one day that you'll have to answer for everything. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but I think that maybe one day when you're older and you die, etc., I think that maybe you're going to have to answer for all your stuff. And I don't want to be sitting there, we've all made mistakes, etc., and made stupid decisions, especially if you're drunk. I've got my other alcohol-free living channel, and the amount of stories that you hear on there about stuff that people done and said, etc., and lies they told your partner. And I think that they're part and parcel with just life, but I think there's a different level. I mean, telling white lies here and making the mistakes we all make to get through life is fine, but I think when you're kind of systematically lying to people's faces because you've got alternative goals, that's just not the way forward. And I think, like I say, I think one day either karma will come back and bite you hard, which you don't want, or you're going to have to answer for what you done. And I could sleep. I'd made that conscious choice when I was, like I say, 22, 23, to always be honest and always be upfront with people. And that's just a way I think that going to bed at night with a clear head and waking up with a clear head is worth more than all the money that you could get from scamming people. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. As I mentioned before, I've got another channel, Alcohol-Free Living channel, with a link in the channel description if you want to watch it. Plenty more of these videos to come, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.